also had a scenario where the buyer's email got hacked, and the sweet buyer sent all of their down payment to a great place in China. There's no way to retrieve it.
How much was it?
It was only $12,000, but this was a first-time home buyer, like their whole life savings. It was nasty because they're on the hook for that.
Yeah.
They didn't follow the rules, and if the seller wanted to sue them, they could be sued.
Yeah.
For not following through the contract.
Hey guys, Alex here with Everything Utah Real Estate. We have our first guest on the podcast. Her name is Amanda Ashby. She is my favorite title person on the whole planet. She does everything that we need her to do. So Amanda, we're just going to jump straight into it. Tell us, obviously, a lot of things that happen in title, people just don't know about it. Like before I became a real estate agent, I didn't know you could have a job as an escrow officer or anything like that. So what do you guys exactly do?
Yeah, most people still don't know what we do, and that's okay. But we take care of insurance on the property or vacant property, home, whatever it is, commercial even. And insurance with title insurance insures past events rather than like your health insurance. Car insurance, it insures the future. So we insure the past events. And that means that we're taking care of paying off mortgages or taking care of liens. Taxes need to be current, HOAs handled correctly, all types of things that could have happened on the property, so that when you transfer title, you're getting clean title and not inheriting somebody else's debts. So.
That makes sense. So can you put the mic a little closer to your face?
Sure can.
No problem. So when you say you insure past events, what are some past things that could pop up on title that could just completely ruin either the value of a property or just blow up a deal?
So lawsuits like lis pendens, they are huge. A notice of interest. So if somebody feels like they have interest in the property and are owed something and they put one on the property, you can go down to your county recorder and record things and whatever you feel like. Unfortunately, we have the opportunity to do that, but it doesn't always mean it's valid. So deciphering between what's valid and what needs to be taken care of and maybe what might be false and need to have some type of court decision made can really slow things down. Tax liens, federal tax liens are a little slower to get payoffs for, so that's something that could take some time. Construction. So when you do construction on a home, there's contractors that put money out on the property. Mm-hmm. And if they don't get paid, they have the right, if they did the process correctly, to put a lien on the property to secure their interest. And those are probably one of your bigger scenarios that will come up more often than the other options. But
yeah,
construction's a big thing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that can also happen with like solar panels as well.
Yep.
Right. If someone gets a loan for solar panels or something.
Yep.
Okay. So what is like, I guess, what's worst case scenario? Because I know criminals can get involved in this kind of stuff too.
Oh yeah.
What is worst case scenario for like a property?
Wow. That's, it really depends. A worst case scenario for somebody could be a divorce that they didn't know they needed to take care of through closing. And if one party is not agreeing to it, that could be a huge problem. It could halt the deal altogether. If they have a lawsuit, I mean, there's all those things. As far as worst case scenario, I would say all things are kind of worst case scenarios. We're in the risk management scenarios here for title. So those are big risks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of all of the above. It could also be deceased relatives who own property on their own. The family thought they could sell it without going through the court. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Then they have to go through this lengthy process. Sometimes you have squatters in the house. I mean, there can be so many variations of what the worst case scenario could look like. But anytime you have a delay in what you want to do and it's not done right, it's going to be that dumpster fire, that worst case scenario. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So I guess, what does your job entail, like on the daily basis? Like what does your day look like?
I do a lot of front end, back end. And I say that because nobody knows what that is, but we do a lot of front end, back end. And we also handle the closings and all the money that comes in and all the disbursement of those funds. So my day could look like getting lenders documentation that they require all the way through cutting checks and sending multi-million-dollar wires. It's kind of every day is different for me. That's something you have to learn to adapt to because no real estate transaction is exactly the same.
Yep.
So where there's no way for me to be like 9 to 5, I work doing this or I do that. So it's a lot of adapting and just making sure that your checklist of items that needs to be done for every transaction is handled correctly.
Yeah.
It's a lot of herding cats.
Okay.
A lot of herding cats.
Yeah. So I guess some on more of the back end stuff, what does that look like? Because you got to explain it. Because I mean, I know a little bit of the things you do on the daily basis, but these guys have no idea.
They have no idea.
So go on a little bit more in depth of like exactly what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, when you say that you want to sell a property, your agent's going to connect with me, hopefully, and then go ahead and order what's called a title report. And that report is the details of the property and what we can expect, the taxes, what mortgages are on there, if there's any problems with the property. And then we give that information so that we know where to go next, right? And then once we've gathered all that information, we do what's called clearing. So we will make sure that, again, those taxes are paid, that the HOA is ordered, that payoffs are ordered for mortgages, that solar liens are taken care of, that if there's any construction that we have to go through the process to check on that and see if those contractors have been paid. A lot of just gathering information. And then once you're under contract, generally the lender will have requirements for what they need from us. We have to do a certain fee quoting and like closing protection letters and that kind of thing. That's all done right up front. But when you get closer to closing, we put all those numbers that we gathered the information from onto settlement statements, closing disclosures, and then we're able to balance with the different parties involved and sit through a closing and make sure the records are up to date again. Also handle the money, make sure that's all balanced. Everybody gets paid after recording, and then we issue policy after. So there's quite a few steps from 1 to 500.
Yeah. So let's say you're pulling title for somebody. Like let's say I have a listing going up and I have you pull title, and there's a lien or a judgment against a property that's on title that my client wasn't aware of. Maybe it was from the previous owner, something like that wasn't taken care of. Property was passed down, whatever the case is. What's the proper way to get that taken care of?
So we would assess where that should have been taken care of. If it was a prior owner, that's a possible title claim. So we would contact the prior company because that's all county records. We can see who recorded the warranty deeds or the title transfer documents, who recorded the mortgage documents. That's all listed on that front page of the recordings. And so we have to go back to those companies and say, hey, how did you clear this off? Or what did you do for this? And most of the time that can be handled quickly because they did their job and they did clear it off and there's proof of that. But sometimes when not, then that company's on the hook because they issued insurance.
Yeah.
So they get to go back and make right on that. And sometimes it can be a super quick thing. Other times it can be a lengthy process to get a claim covered. But we do have to make sure that those are all handled too. That's part of that clearing process.
And you mentioned the word claim. That's assuming you have insurance. Now,
Yes.
what if you purchased your home, you figure like it's a new build, you figured, oh, there's no problem here with the title. I'm not going to pay, an extra couple $1,000, and something pops up on title. Mm-hmm. At that point, what do you do?
If you did not get insurance, so in the state of Utah, you cannot do a closing that handles money like that without having some insurance policy issued. Mm-hmm. So some developers and builders will not pay for the owner's policy.
Yep.
They'll require the buyers to pay for that. So it's really important that you read through those contracts to make sure that your buyers are covered. Because if they don't have that owner's policy, they're kind of on the hook for that.
Yep. And if you guys don't know, so anything that relates to title is going to be more expensive than any kind of furnace that goes out, any kind of roof that goes out, really anything. Title is one of the most expensive things to get taken care of if you don't have insurance that could possibly exist. So make sure you get that taken care of. And that's one of the things you want to do during due diligence, make sure the title's good, and also make sure at the end of it you have insurance. How much does insurance usually cost?
It's all on a sliding scale.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a $500,000 sales price, that owner's policy is not going to be the same amount as $1 million. So it's state regulated. We have to submit those fees to the state, and then it just depends on what your sales price is.
Yeah, so like let's say $600,000 home.
I mean, I'd have to look, but you're a couple grand.
Yeah.
in your policy.
Yep. And it's always recommended. It's like car insurance. It's like you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It's like I said, it's very expensive to get rid of some type of claim on your title. What's like the sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in real estate, if you pay attention to your contract, it's written in there that you'll provide insurance.
Yep.
It's that important. So if you're using a purchase contract and you're not doing just I don't know, if you know the buyer or seller or whatever, and you have like some handwritten whatever, but if you're using that real estate purchase contract, it's already built in there. There's no way around it. Exactly. Unless all parties agree to it.
Yep, exactly. And that's one of the things where if you're hiring an agent or if you're working with an agent on the other side of a deal, if you're, selling your home by yourself, this is one thing that a lot of, for sell by owners don't really know. They don't know that they need a title insurance policy. They don't know that they need to provide it, or they don't know that somebody needs to pay for it. So this is something that's very important because, like I said, a lot of people don't know about this kind of stuff. So what's like the craziest thing you've ever had pop up? I don't care if it was before, after, during closing.
I tend to get the crazy divorce scenarios where we're tracking down estranged wife from 7 years ago. We had one, she was not in her right mind.
Oh, no.
I won't go too far into that just for privacy reasons, but it was a chore to find her, and she was homeless. And so
oh, wow.
It was really, really a struggle to find her, but also be able to identify her because she didn't have proper identification. So it was a huge delay for the seller.
I could imagine. How long did it take you to find her?
That particular transaction took about 9 months to complete.
Holy crap.
Thankfully, the buyers were renting from the property. So there wasn't a scenario where people were out of a home or a place to live. But in his divorce decree, he was supposed to sell the home within a certain amount of time. They had to make sure that was okay at the courts. It was just a big mess.
Do you remember like the date that was on settlement? Like what day were they supposed to, or I guess how many days were they supposed to take to settle?
If I remember correctly, this was during 2020. So it would have been one of those short 30-day closes, and clearly it didn't work that way.
Yeah, and that's about average. Like average day, like average amount of time for closing, unless you're doing like a new build or something crazy, is like 30 days. Sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. So that was an eight month delay.
Yeah.
And if the buyers weren't okay with that, the deal would have been zapped like that.
Yeah, and then you're looking at lawsuit problems, all kinds of things. I also had a scenario where the buyer's email got hacked.
Oh, no.
And they had an email come in, and it had, please send your wire now so that we're good for closing to this instructions. And sweet buyer did not listen to all the warnings and sent all of their down payment to a great place in China. And they never got that money back. There's no way to retrieve it.
How much was it?
It was only $12,000, but this was a first-time home buyer, like their whole life savings. There was no way for them to just borrow and get out of that. It was nasty because they're on the hook for that.
Yeah.
They didn't follow the rules, and if the seller wanted to sue them, they could be sued.
Yeah.
For not following through the contract.
And that is called wire fraud.
Yes, it is.
Let's touch on that a little bit. Because, I mean, if you're working with us, you're going to be told about wire fraud. We're actually going to send you an addendum to our agency agreement about wire fraud. But let's just touch on that for the people who don't know. So what is wire fraud? How do you catch it? How do you look out for it? What to do, what not to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's just dirty, rotten people that can do some really tricky things and take over where money should go or where it shouldn't go. And we don't want that, especially in real estate. You're spending a lot of money for a property, and the last thing you want to do is send proceeds to some bank in Sweden or whatever, and there's no way to get it back, and there's nothing that can be done at that point. But we're very careful at that. Every single payoff statement we send money out on gets verified through a company that we have. And so we know that those instructions that we received
are solid.
We've even had scenarios where we've been faxed a payoff statement and it's not the right payoff information. And so we're very careful with that. That has to be certified every single payoff. If I gather instructions for someone through closing, it is in person. I do not take wiring instructions through email, and I don't take it over the phone because there's too many scenarios that could go wrong there.
Yeah.
So we also don't like to give wiring instructions through email prior to closing if we're going to be meeting with the buyers, because again, that's just one other way for them to have it hacked or
to get confused or whatever the case is.
Not sure what's going on, but if we do email, it's secured, and then they're required to call in and verify those before. So
yeah,
if they don't, it's out of my hands. I don't know what to do there, but yeah, we have to take it very seriously. It's probably the number one thing that we will not waver on at all through the closing process.
Yeah, just to really make sure. And just to explain it a little bit more, basically, let's just say you're buying a home or something like this, right? At the end of the day, you have to send your money for the down payment, right? You have to send it somewhere. So what ends up happening is these scammers somehow manage to get your information and figure out, oh, this person's buying a home. They may not know the exact deadline of when you're closing, but they know they usually send it at pretty good timing of when you're closing. And then you'll get instructions of where to send money. And obviously, the instructions you're going to get at closing and the instructions that email sends you are going to be different. The instructions that email sends you is going to be to somebody's account, personal account, whatever, however they figure that out. Anyways, it's not where it's supposed to go. So you could be out literally hundreds, depending on how much you're putting down or whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars just gone. And there's no way you get that back unless that person's kind enough to send you back your money, which they never do. But
that doesn't happen.
That's basically what it is. And there's a lot of ways that wire fraud could be introduced to you, but you always want to trust whatever instructions are given to you at closing by your escrow officer or whoever's handling your closing. Never over the phone, text, email, anything like that. So Yeah, that's a huge bummer because
Yeah, that ruins people's day. I can tell you that right now.
sometimes their life, yeah.
Absolutely.
If it's enough money, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. What are some other things that you guys do?
We are, again, very clear on the wiring. We don't waver there. Things that make us different. We definitely have the experience, especially on my team. I've been doing this for 23 years, so I know a little bit about what I'm doing. And my assistant's licensed and just an incredible mind. And so it does matter who you work with. It does. And having the knowledge behind it to be able to solve problems is essential. You know, you run into crazy things. Like we just had a religious transaction where due to their beliefs, they could not obtain debt in their name.
Really?
And so we had to do a whole different closing structure. And at the end of the day, I ended up having to really fight for their rights on that because another side was wanting to treat it like two transactions, which would defeat the whole purpose of them obtaining that debt in their name. And so it was a fight. We ended up having to call the state and getting a bunch of people involved to get that solved. But if you don't know what you're doing or how to solve those problems, that deal could have just completely died.
Yeah.
So we were able to save it last second, but that could cost people a lot of money.
And that's something that doesn't even pop up very often.
No,
you don't hear
not
about
at
that
all.
at all.
I've done that first time my whole career.
So not very many people know how to solve that if it even does pop up.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does matter. They have the education. We have an in-house title plant, which means that we don't farm that out. So all the information and the people who search those properties are easy access to me. So if I have questions, we don't have to wait for a week to get an answer. They're usually really quick.
That's awesome.
And then we travel. I mean, just because I may be housed in Lehigh doesn't mean I don't go every other place in the entire state to make sure that people are taken care of. There's other options. We have remote online notary for sellers. It's not quite okay for buyer side packages yet. Lenders don't really love those. But for sellers, if they're stationed overseas and we need to do that so that we don't have the long wait for FedEx
back or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that time frame, being able to do it over online is a time saver, and it makes a big difference. So we have that capability as well as notaries and all kinds of things. So there's really not a transaction that we can't handle. And I've been able to prove that over and over, and I'll travel to Vernal. I'll travel wherever we need to go. And that's a big plus. Something that I am very happy to do because you guys work weird hours.
Yep.
Doesn't mean just because I like to work 9 to 5 doesn't mean that that's when questions come up and things like that. So
yeah,
we try to make it as smooth as possible for everyone.
What's one mistake people do? And this may not be the best way to phrase the question, so
Sure.
I'll give you a little bit of background. So I have like family and friends, who they may have kids that they want to, when they die or something happens to them in the event, God forbid, they want to make sure that their kids are taken care of, that they don't have to go through probate, and, they want to make sure title transfers really cleanly. But I know it's not usually recommended to just throw your kids on title.
No.
What are some, I guess, mistakes? What are some recommendations you have? What's the best way to handle something like that?
Definitely get yourself a trust. That trust will dictate who gets to sign in case of someone passing away, and it protects you from that probate scenario. And then also, if you put your child on title in their individual name, let's say they're not very responsible with their money, they have a lot of judgments and things that attaches to the property, and there's no way around that. So that you get to deal with that when it's sold, which the other siblings probably wouldn't be too happy about. But if if you do a trust, it doesn't matter. It's all dictated in that trust who can sign and how the money is taken care of and how that's to be handled.
Yeah.
So that kind of coincides with your will, but the trust is what's recorded on the property, and it is the best way to handle that.
Yeah, I agree, because another thing that could happen, and I've actually run into this, is let's say you have, your kid on title and you want to sell your house. You want to upsize, whatever the case is, but your kid doesn't. Well, they actually have ownership to your property now, so they have legal say-so whether or not the property sells or not, because at the end of the day, you need 2 signatures, or I guess however many people are on title. You need that many signatures, right? So if your kid doesn't want to sell, you're not selling because they don't have to sign, and you can't force them to either.
Yeah, it's not one of those just majority votes. It's everyone on title.
Exactly. Everyone has to agree to it. So that's not usually recommended. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Get a trust. But okay. So do you feel like there's anything else you need to make known to the world that you guys do?
We're not as boring as it sounds. We try to make it fun. So if you have a question, that's my jam. Like, you have a question, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out, because there's really nothing that can't be done. There's always a solution for everything. And so, it's just a matter of working together and having fun while we do it. Because let's be honest, it doesn't sound very fun what I do, but I love it. It's really fun. It's like a mystery every single time. So.
What are some other things that people can do? Because criminals can get involved. People could sell your house without you even being really aware of it. If title doesn't catch it, or the realtor doesn't catch it, or the lender, whoever doesn't catch it. So I guess, let's say very beginning stages, you purchased your home, you got a insurance policy, all that jazz. You did good, but then some things pop up after closing. I guess, what are some other things that every one of the viewers who owns a home should go do? Is there anything that you could recommend?
Just make sure you get that owner's policy. Part of that owner's policy is ensuring that whoever signed for the property was entitled to sell that property. So that's why you always go through a title company, always. If you don't verify that, obviously that's a problem, but that is part of your insurance. That's why it's essential.
Yep.
Just keeping people in check. You never know. Some fraudster down the street wants to sell your house and pretend to be you, but we're very careful on that as well. We have a new system that runs ID through the government system that will flag it if it's incorrect. So you can't do a fake ID and get away with it, because we'll be able to catch that.
That's awesome. So you got all the bases covered.
Yes, we do. We have to, unfortunately.
Right.
In this day and age.
People get creative with how they steal people's money.
Man, it can get scary out there, but when you have all the tools to make sure that it's not, it's fun. It makes it really easy, but
That's awesome. Well, I don't actually think we got any questions in for the Instagram, so unfortunately we don't have any questions from the audience.
That's okay.
Do you feel like anything else, any other bases need to be covered?
No, I think if you're curious about something, just ask.
Yeah.
That's about, don't assume you know how to sell a property. Don't assume you know the answers to it. Ask the professionals.
Yep, so I agree.
Makes it easy.
She's making it sound super straightforward right now. She's doing you guys a huge favor. There's so much crap that goes into it, and she's doing a great job at condensing it to make it bite-sized. But yeah, we always appreciate you, and I'll actually throw your information down in the video just in case people have questions, if you don't mind people reaching
absolutely.
out to you. But that's awesome. I appreciate your time, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's jump on again.
Okay, sounds awesome.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
See you guys. Appreciate your time. Bye.